When I was young, my grandparents would engage me with fanciful stories of growing up in the hills of Arkansas. Stories of famous outlaws, Belle Starr, the Dalton Gang, Cole Younger of the Younger Brothers fame, the Hatfields and the McCoys. My family actually married into the Hatfield family. My grandfather would sit in his rocking chair while I sat cross-legged on the floor, listening intently, thinking at the time that this all sounded made up. But I didn't really care. I was enjoying my grandfather telling stories that were important to him. It was only later as an adult that I did a little research to find out that the stories actually had some truth to them. All of those famous outlaws spent time in this part of the country, and my family even named their children after them. Cole, James, Belle, for example. Unfortunately, my grandfather had passed by the time I realized the truth, taking the details of his stories with him. When the day came that I got to visit Arkansas for the first time in the places that I'd heard about while growing up, I felt a visceral sense of connection, of home. These are my roots. These are my people. I believe that the basis for healthy individuals and healthy communities is being rooted in home, having a sense of belonging, roots. Where do you call home? Is it where you came from? Is it where you live now? What pops into your head when I say the word belonging or home? I have 3 places that I call home, places where I have roots, places where I belong. The first being Arkansas, born out of the stories my grandparents would tell. My second home was where I grew up in Alton, Illinois, a town across the river from St. Louis, where Abraham Lincoln would ride his horse down from Springfield and practice law. My parents were also born in this area. It was their hometown. Many of us have a hometown where we remember what came before. We remember that car dealership used to be a local Kmart, or the local bar, driving by the local barbershop, remembering how scary it was getting our first haircut there. My third home is Phoenix. Having lived in the cloudy and humid Midwest, the day I arrived, I said to myself, I love this place. The dry air, the sunshine. This feels like home. I choose it. I love our town and its history, and have been helping people create home through my work as a real estate agent for over 10 years. Here I am 35 years later and have no intention of moving. My experience may not be a common theme in Phoenix, however. Phoenix is a transient city. Most people live in their house from 5 to 7 years. Even if they continue to live in Phoenix, they move to a new house or a new neighborhood. This lack of permanence has a major impact on our city. Our symphony and libraries struggle for funding. Large donors will endow the symphony back home instead of Phoenix. We tear down the historic Fox Theater, once the grandest theater in Arizona, to make way for a bus terminal because we have no connection to its past or value the future that it represents. Could we ever imagine Parisians tearing down the Eiffel Tower to make way for a bus terminal? Some say that's not the same. It is. We have the history that we have, just as Parisians have the history that they have. The length of that history is irrelevant, and it's just as important. I came across this interesting statistic that Phoenix has, per capita, the least number of cemetery plots in the country. This means that people will go home to be buried because for them, home isn't here. Home is somewhere else. Without this connection to home, cultures can evolve in arbitrary and unhealthy ways. Have you ever heard people say, or even thought yourself, that Phoenix has no culture? When most people hear the word culture, they think of cultural institutions like the symphony, the opera, the art museum. Phoenix has these cultural institutions. There is, however, some validity to what people are saying, and it's not about our institutions. Culture is not something that you buy a ticket to. What's missing is a shared understanding of what came before. This is what gives rise to culture in a community. It's that sense of home that I referred to. This sense of home has us feel as though we are rooted and belong. Without it, we could feel disconnected and alone, even though we may be surrounded by almost 5 million people. Have you ever had times in your life when you felt lonely or separate, isolated, like you didn't belong? Humans have an innate need to belong, to be a part of a tribe, to feel like they've been claimed by others, claimed by family, by friends, by a tribe. We all need to belong to be emotionally healthy. Those times when you felt that you had no community or didn't belong, what actions did you take? Did you pick some random groups to join or activities to keep you busy? Without a sense of home and belonging, those kinds of activities may have provided some temporary relief from the feelings of being separate, but I would guess that this was not the solution. Most of us assume that the experience of belonging or home is something that's beyond our control, that we either feel it or experience it or we don't. But belonging and home can be created. Rarely will it be created from picking random activities, as I mentioned before. If you want that sense of belonging, that sense of home, and roots, first you have to choose it. When you choose something, it means that you embrace it for all that it is and all that it is not. And I urge you to choose where you live now as home. You may not like 115 degrees during the summer, for example. This comes with being a Phoenician. You can indeed choose it. You can choose 115 degrees. Own it. This is where you live right now. Second, get curious. Stop at the Pueblo Grande Museum that you've been driving by every time you go to the airport. Ask who were the Holcomb people and what happened to them. Research that building that looks like a wedding cake close to Sky Harbor Airport that you've always wondered about. And put it on your calendar one Saturday to get a tour. Ask your neighbors what cool or fun things there are to do within walking distance. You might just be surprised. Invite your neighbor to have lunch at the local restaurant in the nearby strip mall. Then ask when you're there, who owns it? And lastly, be a yes to the opportunities that arise. Be a yes to volunteering at the wedding cake building. Google it if you were intrigued. Be a yes to joining the book club that your neighbor invited you to. Proudly show off your discoveries to your winter visitors. So as you can see, by taking these 3 steps, home and a sense of belonging can be created. It's an investment into your own well-being and an investment into your community. Consider that Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz spent the entire movie searching for home, only to find that she was home all along. She just had to choose it. Thank you.